Us modern humans basically view the weather as a total non-factor in our lives. Just one more thing we as a species have subverted or dealt with head-on. Yet another conquered subject. Weather events that used to decide the fate of nations and empires are now reduced to cheap small talk between co-workers at your day job. With modern building techniques and the advent of reinforced concrete and galvanized steel, we no longer have to worry about the winds tearing down our homes. And with advancements in central heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, we can effortlessly stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer. We can literally see the future and know when bad storms are coming because we can see them a week away thanks to computer models, data collection, and satellite imagery. We can easily put a roof over our heads and stay dry when it rains, and we, for the most part, want for nothing and fear nothing in the developed world. One of the biggest hurdles for life on this earth has been cleared effortlessly by the advancements of human civilization. But every once in a while, Mother Nature will wind up and throw us a curveball just to remind us who's boss. Even still, those curveballs are rare enough that we can live our lives without the ever-present threat of a strange weather event killing us or triggering the apocalypse. With most of the uncertainty of life now far behind us, we have more leisure time than ever, and thus began a great explosion of art, music, and sports at the turn of the 20th century. By the 1950s, all of the major American sports leagues had been founded and were old enough now to prove that they had some real staying power. Chief among them was NASCAR, which had surged in popularity in the post-war years as one of the cheapest forms of motorsports to get involved in at the time. And I will contend that there is no sport more affected by weather than auto racing, and no form of auto racing has been mollywopped by weird weather events quite like NASCAR. Basketball and hockey have been played indoors for so long that the most recent examples of outdoor games were just one-off gimmick games held for novelty's sake. NFL football teams have more domed stadiums than ever, but even in the open-air stadiums they do have, weather rarely results in a delay or a postponement. Rain, sleet, snow, mud, or whatever, the show must go on.
Can't read the numbers on the field, can't read the yard markers, can't read the players' numbers, the struggle will continue.
Baseball is played in the spring and summer, and they also have domed stadiums, but far fewer than the NFL. But the worst they have to worry about is a little rain, and they have massive tarps to keep their playing surface dry until the storm subsides. But they do get the occasional oddity thrown their way.
At second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earth.
But in motorsports, the speeds are so fast and the margin for error so narrow that any suboptimal conditions could result in death or serious injury. Everything must be perfect in order to race cleanly, and making matters even worse is that NASCAR spans from coast to coast and has the longest season in professional American sports, beginning in February and ending in November, meaning that any conceivable weather event can and has occurred at least once or twice. I talked earlier about Mother Nature throwing us curveballs every so often, and when she does in NASCAR, it usually comes in the form of rain. In IndyCar and Formula 1, most of their racing is done on expertly crafted road courses that have drainage areas for rain, and they also have rain tires to cut through the water and keep cars pinned to the track. But NASCAR stock cars are so heavy that rain tires can only do so much, and we've only been using them in competition for about a decade and a half, whereas open-wheeled cars have been using them for about as long as NASCAR has even existed. Making matters even worse is NASCAR races predominantly on high-speed banked ovals, where rain racing is impossible with that much water cascading down the high banks. These tracks are also so big in most cases that it could be dry on one end and raining on the other, which is exactly what happened at the 2001 All-Star race. The open race went off without a hitch, but when the green flag flew for the main event, it only took one corner to find the problem.
Real loose on the start, almost spun. A bunch of guys did. Jeff Burton got in the back of Tony Stewart and turned him sideways. Oh, the car's sideways. All the cars are loose down in the corner. The track is wet. It's Gordon, Michael Walter, Kevin 29 car. All these cars are wrecking because I believe it might be raining down there.
Since this was the All-Star race and not a regular season points-paying race, NASCAR allowed the teams to unload their backup cars and race those instead, even though they had not been subjected to pre-race tech inspection. Some teams that had survived the carnage protested, but NASCAR threw caution to the wind and let the race commence once the track was dry. Jeff Gordon won in his backup car, a car that was widely thought to be illegal, but it skated through post-race tech inspection without any issues. Was the car tampered with during the race to fix any illegalities that might have been installed? Well, there's only a few people who know for sure, and they've never said a peep. Shockingly, this would not be the last time NASCAR greenlit a race on a track where it was already raining. In 2021, the race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway saw the exact same thing happen. When the dust settled and the rain subsided, Eric Almirola took the lead with a bad fast car and pulled away. As the sun began to set, the race was called due to darkness. Eric walked away with just the third victory of his career and the second called due to a shortened race. One quirk in the NASCAR rulebook that is if a race can make it past the halfway point and it is postponed for any reason and can't be restarted in a reasonable amount of time, then whoever was ahead at the time of the postponement is declared the winner. In 2014, Eric found himself leading the summer race at Daytona when rain struck. The deluge was so bad that NASCAR called it fairly quickly, making Almirola the king of winning races in the weirdest ways imaginable. One time he won a race without even driving the car at the finish, but that's a story for another time. The phrase in the halfway point rule, quote, reasonable amount of time, is up for interpretation, and sometimes NASCAR makes the word reasonable do a lot of heavy lifting. In 2009 at the Daytona 500, the biggest race of the year, light rain began to fall late into the race, and it only took 16 minutes before NASCAR declared the race over and Matt Kenseth the winner. Daytona has lights, so NASCAR could have gotten the race restarted but decided against it for whatever reason. As fans shuffled to their cars, they could already see the ground drying up, and the whole ordeal left a sour taste in everyone's mouth. 3 years later, rain would cause the Daytona 500 to be run on a Monday night, which became one of the most memorable 500s in recent memory when Juan Pablo Montoya was trying to catch up to the field during a yellow flag when something inexplicably broke on his car and he slammed into a jet dryer that was trying to push debris off the track. Jet fuel flooded the turn and quickly ignited, and it just so happened that this was during a pit stop cycle. And Dave Blaney, who had never won a NASCAR Cup Series race, was the leader when the race was red flagged for the Inferno in turn 3. Jet fuel burned so hot that it melted the track, and we were past halfway, meaning that Blaney would have been the winner. But the fire was put out and the track was repaired, and Blaney had to give up his hopes of sneaking away with the Daytona 500 crown. Matt Kenseth would go on to win that race too. Damn it, Matt, you just cannot let us have any fun, can you? Speaking of not having fun, in 2020 and 2021, the Daytona 500 was rain delayed back-to-back after organizers pushed the start back to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time to draw in a West Coast audience. But that backfired after NASCAR, which is based in Florida, failed to remember that Florida has year-round rain showers that strike in late afternoon like clockwork. They've since moved the start time up to 2:30 p.m., but many still want the old noon starts back. So a full race can be run before the afternoon showers become an issue, the West Coast audience be damned. But to be fair, the West Coast audience doesn't really matter when you're in a rain delay, now does it? It seems like I've mentioned Daytona quite a lot in this video already, and to be fair, I don't think any venue in NASCAR history has been so affected by things so far out of its control before, so expect it to keep popping up from here on out. It seems only fitting that NASCAR's biggest draw for spectators ends up drawing the most ire from Mother Nature. Rain has plagued NASCAR's existence from the very beginning, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the things NASCAR has invented to combat it. Jet dryers not only blow debris off the track, but fleets of them are stationed at every track so they can blow hot air onto the asphalt to make it dry quicker. Even after a torrential downpour, a fleet of jet dryers can get the biggest tracks race ready again in just a couple of hours. The Air Titans were invented by NASCAR to provide a greater surface area for a single truck to cover so more track can be dried in a shorter amount of time. And in recent years, NASCAR has joined F1 and IndyCar in using rain tires at road courses, but even then, rains can be too much for them to overcome. Unfortunately, we can only do something about the rain after the storm is past. But what if you could stop the rain from happening in the first place? Vortex Theory is an idea posed by three-time Cup Series champion Darrell Waltrip that claims if you have enough cars traveling at fast speeds in a tight enough circle, then the circling winds created by the cars would cause enough of a vortex to drive away cloud formations or blow away light rains. It seems far-fetched, but there have been so many cases of races where rain was a threat but hadn't hit the track yet, but once a caution came out for a wreck, the rain would suddenly begin. Even other NASCAR drivers have come to believe in Vortex Theory wholeheartedly, their experiences overriding the absurdity of the claim entirely. Some others think it has less to do with wind and has more to do with the heat generated by the cars and the people in the grandstands, and that heat is enough to make a light rain evaporate before it touches down. Whatever the case may be, Vortex Theory still has plenty of detractors, and we may never know if its claims hold any weight. It might just be a bunch of literal and figurative hot air. Vortex Theory is probably less of a theory and more of a far-flung hypothesis. So over the years, attempts have been made to hold races where there is very little chance of rain in the first place, the arid climates out on the West Coast. In 1958, NASCAR held its first race at Riverside in California in June. Although the temps were hot, rain was pretty much impossible in that part of the country at that time of year. But eventually it got a second date and became the first race of the year in January. That race had many more problems with fog and rain, and eventually that date was moved to the last race of the year in November, but that didn't help much either. In 1983, Bill Elliott won his very first race thanks to a rain-shortened event at Riverside that ended with some controversy. Rain was known to be on the way, so Darrell Waltrip and Tim Richmond were in a heated battle for the lead in the closing laps, and ended up wrecking each other. Darrell was just a few dozen points behind the championship leader Bobby Allison, and had Darrell won that race and Bobby slipped in the rain that began pouring down just a little bit later, Darrell could have walked away with the cup. Going forward, NASCAR would move the final race of the season to safer venues like Atlanta, Georgia, since the last thing they wanted was a champion decided by rain. But in 1998, rain struck the race and NASCAR waited out nearly 7 hours of on and off rain delays and finished the race at nearly 1 a.m. Monday morning. In 2002, they moved the final race to Homestead Miami Speedway, which is actually pretty dry that time of the year, and the race was never hampered by weather from then until 2019. In 2020, the race was moved to Phoenix Raceway in Arizona, the safest bet of all. But that very first year, just an hour after the race was concluded, rain hit the track. And in 2015, a race at Phoenix, held in November just like the championship race of today, was ended prematurely after a veritable monsoon struck, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. scored the final victory of his Cup Series career. With NASCAR's new championship format being decided by a Final Four set of drivers in the last race of the year with the highest finisher of the quartet being the champion, it becomes inevitable that one day a NASCAR crown will be appointed not by a driver's skill, but by Mother Nature's roll of the dice. But sometimes in the desert, torrential rain isn't the only thing you have to worry about. At the spring race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in 2016, the start of the race was delayed by a rainstorm. But it cleared out soon enough, but later in the race, the winds reversed and brought with them a sandstorm that was bad enough for the race to be delayed again, just so spotters in NASCAR race control could see what was going on out on the track. The deserts out west are a catch-22 situation for NASCAR. If you hold a race during a pleasant time of year, you are almost certainly going to be hit with rain or something strange. But if you wait until there is no possibility of rain, closer to the summer months, then the heat will drive away fans and push drivers to the point of injury or worse. The inside of race cars get extremely hot even in the best of circumstances, routinely hitting temperatures of 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And when it's hot outside the car, it gets even hotter than that. Summer races even back in NASCAR's heartland in the South are also questionable. The 2022 Nashville race was held in 90-degree heat, and Xfinity Series driver Ryan Vargas said it was the hottest and most challenging race he's ever been a part of. And multiple drivers fell out after the race just trying to cool down and avoid heat exhaustion. Atlanta Motor Speedway, which was now also a summer race, had similar issues. In the years since, both these venues have pushed their races back to night races on Sunday night. For the longest time, the worst offender as far as heat was concerned was Daytona's summer race. For most of its run, the Firecracker 400 was run on the day of July 4th, regardless of what day of the week that fell on. To get around the heat, the race would begin at 10 a.m., but by the halfway point, the high for the day had already been reached and fans cooked in the infield and grandstands all day. In 1998, NASCAR installed lights at Daytona to run the race on the Saturday night of July 4th weekend. But that too came with a once-in-a-lifetime curveball. That year, Florida, the wettest state in the Union, was terrorized by wildfires, and Daytona International Speedway was used as a base of operations to fight the fires, and Lake Lloyd in the infield was used as a reservoir to fill up water tanks and firefighting equipment. So the traditional July 4th date was rescheduled to October. However, in 2020, the Daytona Summer Race was moved to late August as the final race of the regular season. Having such an important race in Florida in the middle of hurricane season worked out about as well as you'd expect. In 2022, the Saturday night race was rain delayed and run on Sunday afternoon, and then rain suddenly struck in between turns 1 and 2 and caused a massive pileup, shades of the 2001 All-Star race.
There's something down there that's reducing grip.
It's called water, idiot! Oh my god! He is so stupid!
But in the midsummer months, rain is still an issue even when outside of the South, and usually bad summer rains bring with them a deadly companion: lightning. In 2012, a spectator at Pocono Raceway was struck and killed by lightning during a rain delay, leading NASCAR to institute a lightning clock rule. If there was a lightning strike within 10 miles of a track, there would be a mandatory caution for 30 minutes, and fans would be advised to leave the grandstands. If there was another strike, then the clock would reset. This rule came into play in 2019 at where else but Daytona's summer race. With a rainstorm on the way according to the radar, teams waited until the absolute last second to pit, hoping that the rain would fall and they'd be out front when the race was ended. But during a caution when 1 to go for the green flag was displayed, everyone came in for fuel, including race leader Kurt Busch. Justin Haley, who was racing part-time for Spire Motorsports, stayed out hoping for rain to fall before the green flag could be displayed. Instead, lightning struck, and NASCAR began their 30-minute lightning clock. During that time, Haley got the rain he wanted and was declared the winner of the race. Predicting rain has come a long way since the early days of meteorology, but we still miss the mark every once in a blue moon. One time a race at Michigan was delayed for rain for about an hour even though there was a 0% chance forecasted for that day. Modern Doppler radar is one of the best tools in detecting rain even before it hits the ground. But in the 1980s and early 90s, not a whole lot of people knew exactly how it worked. One time, crew chief Larry McReynolds had his driver Davey Allison leading the Southern 500 at Darlington on Labor Day weekend when rain was detected in the area. A caution came out for a wreck and Davey was on older, worn-out tires. With his competitors now right behind him on fresher tires, Larry Mack had a tough choice to make. Does he stay out and hope for rain, or does he pit for fresh tires and get the jump on the field and hope rain holds off for long enough for him to make up the difference? Larry tells a crew member to check the TV for what the radar looks like. The crewman reports back that everything looks clear. Larry Mack takes a deep breath and orders Davey to pit for new tires. But before Davey could even leave the pits, rain began to fall. Larry looks at his crewman and yells, "What in the world? I thought you said we were in the clear." The crewman shrugs and replies, "I don't know what to tell you. It was green all around us." Apparently not knowing that green means rain and not all good. It was a major screw-up to be sure, but remember, rain hit the moment the caution came out. Was this yet another example of Vortex Theory at work? Who could tell? In 2016, at a race at Pocono, radar was picking up a massive front of rain headed towards the track, so drivers and crew began staying out as long as possible, just hoping to be out when the rain inevitably came. But it never did. Instead, water droplets from a fog bank had been what the radar was pinging, and soon fog enveloped half the track. With spotters and race control unable to tell what was going on in the fog, they ordered the race to be stopped until it lifted, which it never did. We were past the halfway point, so NASCAR called it official. For the first time ever, a race ended due to lack of visibility by way of fog. Chris Buescher won the first race of his career, driving for a smaller team that had only ever claimed one victory prior, ironically a rain-delayed race at Talladega. In 2006 at the Daytona 500, fog rolled into the track, but it was just then enough that spotters high atop the press boxes could still make out their drivers on the backstretch nearly a mile away. But for fans and TV broadcasters, it was a surreal experience. Cars would fly off into the corners and disappear into the mist, only to reappear and be swallowed by the haze again at the other end of the track. Some wanted the race to be called or halted, but NASCAR let it continue and Jimmy Johnson nabbed his first Daytona 500 victory without any major issues that day. How the wind blows a storm or a fog bank on any given race day could hand the wind to any random driver that started the race. But sometimes the wind doesn't even need to be pushing anything besides your car. Danica Patrick was qualifying for the Daytona 500 in 2013 when a gust of wind gave her a massive tailwind going down the backstretch, and she nabbed the pole thanks to that perfectly timed breeze. And wind has been known to send cars spinning all by themselves. Race cars run on the ragged edge, right on the line of completely losing control. As the great Mario Andretti once said, "If you feel in control of the car, then that means you're not going fast enough." A sudden unfortunate gust could completely total a car and cost a team hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the worst winds aren't found at the beaches of Daytona, but in the flatlands of the Midwest. Temps in the Midwest during the summer are far more tolerable than down south or out west, but with that comes sudden violent storms that seemingly pop up out of nowhere. Anyone from that area can tell you a story or two about how nice the weather was right before a deadly tornado hit. Although no NASCAR track has ever been hit with a tornado during a race, the same cannot be said during its downtime. In July of 2005 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, a massive F2 tornado spun off from Tropical Storm Cindy and ripped down a scoring pylon in Turn 3 and destroyed the grandstands and suites on the backstretch. Those buildings were of special importance to the track as they used to be the front stretch before the track was reconfigured in 1997. The same grandstands that had stood since the track was built in the 1960s and the press boxes that had presided over Alan Kawicki's fateful 1992 championship were now gone forever. But if you can believe it, this was not the worst weather event at Atlanta Motor Speedway. NASCAR's scheduling means that snow is almost never a concern. The series starts in late February, sure, but it spends late winter either down south or out west. Even still, that's not enough to stop Mother Nature from giving us a quite literally chilling reminder that she can do whatever she wants at any given time. In 2022, the Las Vegas spring race for the Xfinity Series had to be stopped for snow flurries. Yeah, snow in the desert. In 2006, the Xfinity spring race at Bristol was stopped mid-race for a snowstorm that was so bad that most people left the track thinking it couldn't be restarted. But the clouds parted and the snow dissipated soon enough to let Kyle Busch earn the win that day. The next day, his older brother Kurt won the Cup Series race there and did a snow angel in his little brother's honor. In April of 2022, snow flurries struck again, this time at Martinsville Speedway in Virginia. A cold snap had worked its way down south and the race had to be delayed for hours waiting for the sleet and snow to let up. Making matters worse was this was scheduled to be a Saturday night race, so fans, including myself, toughed it out in freezing temps and watched William Byron walk away with a W sometime around midnight. Yep, I went through all of that just to watch yet another Hendrick win at Martinsville. Needless to say, Martinsville did not opt for a night race the next year. But all of that pales in comparison to what happened at Atlanta's spring race in 1993, and what is arguably the craziest weather event to ever disrupt a race in NASCAR history. Most NASCAR races stricken by weather are delayed for a few hours or at most a day or two. This one was delayed for nearly a week. On March 14, 1993, the entire eastern side of the U.S. was hit with the biggest snowstorm in recorded history. Middle Alabama clear into western Massachusetts reported record levels of snowfall, and Atlanta, Georgia was blasted with a foot of snow in a single night. Not only was Georgia not prepared to deal with that much snow, but what little equipment they did have had already been mothballed for the year. Mid-March is short sleeve weather for Georgia. To get that much snow that late in the year is completely unheard of. It had never happened before, it has not happened since. Some places in the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina reported up to 50 inches of snow. Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, the busiest airport in the world, was shut down. And for the first time ever, the city of New York issued a warning on the public emergency broadcast system for a blizzard. The race, scheduled for Sunday the 14th, had to be delayed for 6 days and was run at noon on Saturday the 20th. Monday and Tuesday were spent just waiting for the snows to melt. So the decision was made to run the race on the weekend, since as luck would have it, it was supposed to be an off week. To this day, the eastern seaboard has never seen another snowstorm that bad. It was truly the storm of the century, and we will most likely never see something like that again, and certainly not that late into the year. Until the day comes when we can drape an indestructible tarp over these massive tracks, or just have them completely enveloped in a bubble and somehow ventilate them properly, weather will always affect racing. And the motorsport with the longest season in the world will probably be the one to bear the brunt of Mother Nature's wrath for a long time to come. From the inescapable heat to the freezing snow and everything in between, NASCAR somehow has this inexorable magnetism towards strange weather events that isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So the next time you're in the stands feeling miserable and upset that the race at your home track isn't going as planned, just remember that as cruddy as it seems, you might just be witnessing history, and hopefully you'll get a fun story out of it to tell your friends and family later. Anyway, I'm Slapshoes, thanks for watching, and until next time, y'all take it easy.